Deere head is a mask on the deer in front of the John Deere tractor.
God, like, least likely too. Okay. Just never know. All right, the music has stopped. I'd like to call this Audit and Accountability Committee meeting to order. Ms. Smith, will you take the roll?
Yes. Chair Ragland, Vice Chair Beckerly,
Here.
Mr. Grant,
Here.
Mr. Vajon, Ms. Adair, Mr. Jordan,
Here?
Mr. Daniel.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I think the next order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? They're here in your packet.
I make a motion to accept it.
Second?
Okay, can we? Although we have this new thing now, is that without exception, or what?
Yeah.
We could just, there's only 4 of us here. Go ahead and call the roll.
I'm sorry, I didn't get, it was Grant and Jordan.
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Beckerly,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes.
and that motion carried.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is committee operations. I'll turn it over to you, Madam Auditor.
Okay, we have, thank you, Vice Chair Beckerly. We have 2 items under committee operations. Okay, just give me a second to get to it. Okay. The first one is the tentative calendar of meetings for 2022. And for those of you who, okay, I think everybody has it in front of them. There are some changes being proposed to the calendar. First, I'm assuming that the Auditor of State will be ready for their closing conference in February. So we have that meeting scheduled. If for some reason they are not ready for that meeting in February, I would ask you all to tentatively hold that March date also. As soon as we know when they're going to be ready, we can let you know, and then we can either hopefully remove the March meeting or know that we're going to have it. The second change is we are trying, in the past, we have did our work plan and then had an informational call in May, and then our work plan would come to the committee in June and then go to the board in August. We're trying to move that timeline up and having the work plan be approved by the board in June. So in order for that to happen, I am proposing that we have the informational session in April and then have an actual meeting in May to approve the work plan. And then it would go to the board, as I said, at their June meeting. Other than that, the other change is we often run into our August meeting being around the first week of school, which has been very problematic. So because it looks like September next year will have 5 Thursdays, I'm suggesting having a meeting September the 1st instead of that August meeting, and then having our regular September meeting. So those are the proposed changes to the schedule and the reason why.
Okay. And is April not on this because that's the informational meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not up.
Okay.
It's information only. So
Is there a date for the April call or April meeting?
I can give you some dates. Normally, like I said, with the May meeting, we were kind of in a routine, but trying to move everything up, I can propose the 4th Thursday in April, and if that's bad for the majority of the committee, then we can move it around. But because it's not an actual meeting, it's not on here.
Okay. Now, are you just sharing that with us, or should we be voting on it
We
tentatively?
can wait until,
I would think so, yeah.
yeah, until the
Okay.
chair and maybe Mr. Badjon are here. So that's just, so that's the calendar of meetings,
We'll take that up in January then.
yes.
Okay,
We've already have the room held, so it's not like,
sure.
yeah, okay. And then the next item, I'm used to Ms. Edwards sitting right next to me and helping me find these things. Just give me a second. Ms. Edwards, I need a little assistance with finding the ANA calendar of activities. I can't locate it in my,
Want this one? This isn't in color, though.
okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. The next item is just a discussion. We've had the audit committee calendar of activities in this format for quite some time, and I wanted to get the feedback from the committee if you had any changes, if you wanted to hear more from one of the departments, maybe not so frequently from another department, or if there's a different information that you want. And once again, it's not something that we have to vote on, because I bring this back to the committee in January. So if anyone has anything right now that they want to bring up, be more than happy to hear that. If you want to look at this and then reach out to me over the next coming months, and I can put it on in January.
We'll talk about it in earnest in January.
Right, we can do
I
that
do
also.
have one thing that I would like, especially our members who are not board members. I'd like your input on how helpful, and Mr. Daniel, this is a little, you've only had a little bit of exposure to this, but now that I've been doing this for almost 2 years, I'm kind of catching on to the rhythm of things. And part of what Auditor Smith does is she sequences throughout the year different departments or segments within the organization, giving us a presentation on where they see their risk. And I guess, and I try to be mindful with our committee work that we're not adding work to staff. And so my question is, how helpful is it to the three of you, and I'll ask Mr. Vag on this, or we can talk about it in January, but these sorts of presentations relative to the work that we're asking the staff to put in, because if it's adding value, and maybe even think about, and this is all stuff to think about as you go forward, is it adding value? Is it helping your understanding of our organization in such a way so that you can provide greater insight in our discussions about our various decision-making? Or is it marginally helpful, in which case we should kind of visit whether we should be asking the staff to do it? Or are there certain group, all of that. So, and we'll have an example of it today because the treasurer's doing one, right?
Mhm.
So you can get a sense of these reports. I mean, that
How
was for
valuable I
Mr.
am or not?
Say, what was that? I didn't hear.
I would hope so.
Good, how valuable.
Yeah, how valuable he is or not. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, that's the one thought that I was going to share, is just let's think about this in terms of staff burden versus benefit.
So are you asking for responses now?
No, I mean, if you want to share, go ahead.
I mean, I was just thinking, yeah, I find it valuable just to have a better perspective of,
Right.
all the things that are going on. I would hope it'd be value to internal audit also, just to be able to bounce ideas and thoughts off of us to get our perspectives on it too, so.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the total, your value is, no, please. I want to make, your value is
Yeah,
invaluable.
I know. I'm just
It's
saying
just
it goes
whether-
both ways,
Okay.
after that.
All right, well, that's really good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think once, using this tonight's as an example, I think it's very helpful. And maybe once it's done, the sort of stake in the ground, and it's changes from sort of there forward. And maybe for newer members, we can find a way to put it in a repository that could be accessed, just to have a learning of here's your
Okay.
here's your onboarding package, and here's all the various operations, how they work, here's our past work in these spaces. I think that would be helpful.
I
So
will be
not
looking forward to
necessarily
hearing
all of them annually unless they've changed.
Or just a brief update. I mean, I think that's just
Okay.
helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because really, this is your calendar.
Right.
Of activities. So if there's something, that you think is gonna be more valuable, less valuable, let us know, and when we can adjust it.
I think they do add a lot of value as far as my perspective in looking at things. But then I do like that you're holding it open. If something, we got a trend going on to next year, we want to explore certain areas, that you'd be open to that, and I think you are.
Yes. And then also, there's been a lot of changes with the superintendent's organization chart.
True.
So I definitely want to hear from the superintendent. Maybe there's, something else that she wants to bring, because she's doing a lot of organizing in her area, and the same with the treasurer. So as the organization changes, I don't want this to be static. I want it to be, dynamic and to meet the needs of the committee. So just let me know what your thoughts are. I'll be reaching out to you all in the next couple of months.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you. Chair Beverly here.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda, Office of Internal Report, introduction of new staff.
Okay, as you see at the end of the table, we have a new staff member, Satya Yarmasetti, joined our department on Monday. And he is our Senior Manager of Information Systems Audit, a position that we have been wanting to fill for quite some time. And Satya brings a wealth of information systems and information risk management. So with that, I will let Satya introduce himself.
Thank you, Caroline. My name is Satya Yarmasetti. I started my career back in India, South India. 2 years I worked in information technology job, and later I migrated to United States in 1996, and then worked for Nationwide Insurance in 1998. And first, my 12 years of experience with information systems, basically like programming and production support and all system support activities. Then I was asked to do Sarbanes-Oxley controls, and then I was not having any idea, but as with my systems knowledge, I was able to put it into right controls in place. Then I got a chance in information risk management team of Nationwide Insurance. So then I joined with the information risk management team. Basically, my overall experience, first line of model and second line model. And as of this Monday, I joined with the third line model with internal audit, with Caroline Smith's internal audit team. I am very excited to bring all my experience to internal audit department, to bring some difference and to help the Columbus school community. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you for joining us. And just as an aside, as we were going through the process to draft the job description, that's definitely not my expertise. So we did work with our IT department, and we shared the description with them, and they had some suggestions, and we made their suggestions. So I think it was goodness gracious. Oh, a great process. Oh, well, nothing like a live catastrophe on. No.
I've had that happen, and you can't undo it.
Okay, so I'm going to toss this over to.
Yes, we'll take, it's a pleasure having you. Thank you. Welcome. We know we're going to put you to work, and, as our IT group is expanding, we're happy to have you, in lockstep with them in our audit world.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand it over to Chair Ragland, who has arrived.
Please
Grateful to
forgive
see
my
you.
tardiness, committee, Madam Auditor, Madam Co-Chair. Sir, I apologize for not being here for your introduction. Welcome to the team. Thank you so much for joining us. As Board Member Beckerly has stated, yes, you will get a lot of work. Yes, that's going to happen. I'm sure it has already gotten started for you, but do not feel overwhelmed. Please make sure to lean on us as committee members, and you've got a wonderful, wonderful team that you are joining, and so very confident that you'll be able to adjust seamlessly and get about the work of achievement for our young people here in Columbus City Schools. But glad to have you on board, and thank you for accepting the assignment.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well,
we're the second bullet under 2.
yes, okay, so we are request for consulting engagements. We're going to start with the transportation processes.
Okay.
Madam Auditor?
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair Ragland. We have had a couple of requests come into the office since the last time that we all met. Actually, 2 that were, actually one we have already started, and the other one I would like to add to the audit work plan probably in January. So the first one was a request for consulting regarding our transportation processes. We have met with Deputy Superintendent James and the Superintendent Dixon, and also our Chief Talent Officer, Mike DeFabo. And we have come up with what we think is a response to some of the concerns that they have in transportation. So I'm going to ask Kevin Sankowski to provide a brief overview of both the transportation consulting engagement and the customer service and call center process consulting engagement, because he will be the one leading both of those engagements. Kevin? You're muted.
The words we never knew we'd know.
That's funny, it doesn't say that I'm muted.
Okay,
Oh, we
you're
got
you're
you
fine
now.
now.
Okay, very good. Yeah, just I'll give you a quick thumbnail of what it is we're looking at. As Carolyn mentioned, we were requested to do some consulting services. Our main focus immediately is going to be in response to the request involving transportation. We're actually going to try to kick that off hopefully next week, from actually interviewing folks and starting down that process. We're going to have a kickoff meeting tomorrow with Dr. James and I believe some other folks from his team to go over some engagement related things. And then we're going to try to hit that hard and heavy and try to knock that out as quickly as we possibly can to try to offer some good feedback on those engagement objectives. The objectives of that one are specifically related to some processes involving bus driver attendance, bus driver call-off process, as well as get an idea of some timelines that are involved in those processes. And then we're also going to do some examination of information systems that are used by the Office of Transportation, the data that's available, kind of how that data is used within the office to manage the office and monitor its performance. So that's the gist of that engagement. The customer service and call center process engagement that Carolyn mentioned will likely take place after the transportation engagement. We have a preliminary understanding of what the ask is. We'll spend some time here over the next couple of months probably trying to really hammer that down a little further and develop some very specific objectives that will meet management's needs. And then we'll do a similar process as far as a kickoff meeting and then actually do the work in response to those objectives. But like she said, that will probably be later on after we're done with the transportation engagement. Are there any questions?
So, Kevin, how long do you expect the initial phase of this to take?
The way it's planned, given we're hoping to have all of the what I'll call field work done during November for the transportation audit. And then with an eye towards being able to deliver an end work product, hopefully by the end of December. Now, what we also intend to do is to do some periodic reporting as we complete certain objectives. We have 3 separate objectives, but we're going to try to knock them out. And then when we knock them out, our expectation is that we'll do some reporting back to Dr. James and his team, just based on that objective. And then we'll continue along as keep working and then hopefully deliver an end product by the end of December.
Yes, Madam Co-Chair.
Hey, Kevin, can you tell us, what are the 3 objectives again? It had to do with bus driver. I think you said them. I just want to make sure I caught them.
Yeah, certainly. We're going to prepare some process maps and general timelines related to receiving notification of unplanned absences by bus drivers, activating substitute bus drivers, and notifying those impacted families in those instances when we've determined that no route is going to be provided. So that's the first one. We're going to do process maps and general timelines around those functions. The second objective is we're going to do some process mapping related to some bigger functions, but related to driver attendance, and they involve recording, monitoring, and reporting that attendance, and then administering employee discipline related to that attendance. So that's our second objective.
Okay.
And then our third objective is we're going to identify computer systems and software applications that are used by the office, what their intended purpose is, the available data that's within them, the use of that available data to manage and monitor transportation's operations.
So coming from one of the things that I think that as a board, the board would be interested in having a handle on is, in addition, and I think this is in here, I just want to double check to make sure somehow this will shake out within those 3 objectives. You know, the rate of routes not being covered, the you know, not just the notification process when a bus is late, but how many are late, and are we getting any better? Are we getting any worse? Do we need to come up with, you know, and it more of how we're doing, is that going to be part of this? Or will that be inherent in what you're doing? I mean, am I being clear, or should I give more examples? Like, I'm kind of curious about how is this bus driver crisis impacting our attendance? And I know that getting that exact is probably not worth the effort it would take, but there are some ways we could estimate it, you know? And also, how are we doing in terms of, is it getting better, is it getting worse, that kind of thing?
Are you asking, you know, an evaluation or an identification of the metrics that are used, and what those metrics measure, what those actual measurements are, like how many missed routes,
yeah,
how many call offs, how many?
I don't know that call offs are not. I mean, because I know that our team is doing Herculean efforts like this. The management is going out and driving the buses because they're not having enough bus drivers showing up. So we get a lot of information about the call-offs, and what I don't have a clearer picture on is how we're doing in terms of getting the kids to school and getting them there on time and then dropping them off on time. We haven't been getting a lot of data about that, and I think the hope was that some of your work would help us gain more insight into that. And I'm listening to what you're describing, and I think it's there, but I'm just not sure.
I think that would likely fall out in the objective 3, when you talk about identifying what systems are available, what data is available, what data is measured, how is that information used. That would clearly be one of the metrics that we would at least inquire about Given the circumstance that we have call-offs that then lead to missed routes, I think a natural question for us would be that question specifically of how many routes did we miss and in what time frame. Now, obviously, all of that is going to be dependent on how the office or how the Office of Transportation collects, manages, reports, stores, and accumulates all of that information, which are some of the things that we're going to dive into. And so I think the answer to your question is yes, that will shake out in the wash. But some of it will be dependent on, just the reliability of data. How much is available? Do they measure it? Do they report it? Do they track it? That kind of information.
Concern is.
Does that help?
It helps a little. I'm concerned there could still be this sort of a thing happening where you dig in and you get good information about what they're doing, what data they collect and all of that, and we're still not going to have an answer to the question of, how many kids, or estimates even of how many kids. And so part of what are not making it to school. And so, in my simplistic thinking about this, one way to estimate how many children are late getting home is how many buses are late getting returned to the compound. I mean, that's very simple, and it's not going to be really accurate, but it would give you a sense. I guess maybe I would hate for you all to get to the end of your work and say, well, we just don't collect that in a way that allows us to analyze that. I would hope part of it is you're going in and trying to come up with maybe proxies is the way to say it for estimating that.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, what would be helpful is you look at the data, see what's there, but also sit back and analyze what would be helpful. So for a number of missed routes, do they track how many students were on those routes? And do we track from a missed route, how many students on that route didn't make it to school?
Yeah.
And if the bus was late, how many students on that route that made it to school, how much class did they miss? So I think just going through and asking what are the right things and if the data is not there, I think the recommendation could be the Transportation Department should consider tracking this type of data to make more informed decisions.
Okay.
Agreed.
So it'd be more forward-looking and not where we are, by definition.
One of
Okay.
the
All right,
things.
thank you.
Yeah, to that point, one of the things I am very interested in, Kevin, is getting data back that shows us how these transportation challenges are impacting us by region. Because if you think about it, where are the absences occurring? Are we seeing more absences in transportation bus drivers in our more challenging schools academically? Because if we're seeing more challenges with folks attending in some of our more challenging areas, that is further compounding our academic problems because we've got so much uncertainty. And I'd like to see that broken down as we move towards this equity lens in how we're viewing what is happening throughout the district. I think it's important for us to know, kind of like the conversation that we have with our substitute teachers, right? We see where we have certain schools that are performing better academically. We've got a higher incident of subs that are willing to go to those schools. But in the schools where we have the most significant challenges, we can't find subs to attend on a regular basis. I want to see if that is occurring within this conversation, and maybe, like Mr. Jordan said, maybe that data doesn't exist. But if we have an opportunity to break those types of things down by region, it may allow us to be more targeted in how we address some solutions to some of those challenges. And so just to kind of put that on your radar, it would be helpful to have that data if we can get it down to that granular of a level.
And what I'd like to add is sometimes, well, actually, we won't know what's available until we actually get in there. Sure. I mean, what you're asking for definitely makes sense. Yeah. You know, if we see that, you know, data that would be helpful for them to have is not there, we're going to make the recommendation, you know, to start capturing the data and to start to track it. But we really just won't know until we actually get into transportation to see what they have, you know. I would be surprised if it wasn't able to determine by region, but I can't commit to that until we actually get in there
Sure.
and
Oh,
actually
yes,
see.
ma'am. And I think that's kind of what we're both saying.
You're right.
Is if it doesn't exist in that capacity,
Well, no.
the board's going to want to know.
Right.
You know, that's probably a recommendation for a solution, is to make sure, you know, in advance, if we can't get it with what we currently have, what are we going to move to so that we can get it in that manner? Because that's really going to be important for us.
Correct.
So, no, yeah, if it doesn't exist, Kevin, and I understand that.
No, and I want to make sure that the expectation is understood as far as what we intend to deliver, because you're spot on as far as analysis of the data and how to use that data. Looking forward for the operation of the Office of Transportation. But I think this engagement is really to essentially set the baseline of what is available and what can be used. Also with the vision of, you know, if we see something that is either not being tracked or is not available that might be useful, is to make the suggestion of either start tracking it or find a way to obtain that data, because, you know, let's say you can't determine how many kids were on the bus that route didn't take place. Well, then we would make the suggestion that you should start tracking that, because that is valuable. But I think, like I said, just to make sure everyone understands the expectation of this specific engagement, it is really just to, at this point, establish what is available to us as an organization that we can use to eventually analyze and reach those questions, or the answers to those questions that you're asking, you know, with such specificity of the number of students, or where we're particularly impacted in a particular region. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. I think probably at some point down the future, and we're certainly available to assist with it, I think that's probably a next step type of either engagement, or a next step for management, as far as once they have this information, is then to act on, okay, we have this data, now let's start using it, and how can we best use it? But I think that's a question for the next step, as opposed to this initial engagement.
Okay, fair enough. That sounds.
Other questions from the committee?
I think I've covered it pretty good.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
thank you very much for that, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, Kevin, don't go anyplace, because you're up for the customer service call center. If you have anything more to add to that, I know we really are at the beginning of steps of this. We haven't even had a real detailed sit down with management to really determine what it is that they're, you know, really looking for, like we did with transportation. But if you have anything you want to add right now, Kevin, by all means.
I don't really. It really is, like I said, it's, I think we have an understanding of the preliminary ask of what it is we're looking to do, involving customer service and call center processes. And that similar to this engagement is kind of an information gathering type of engagement, you know, as far as who all is operating customer service and call center processes, what are those processes and things of that nature. Again, trying to get a handle on what we're currently doing as an organization. And then, again, whatever the next step after that is, once we have that understanding, what do we do with that information to move the organization forward? But it still is very preliminary, and we have to nail down the specific objectives that we would try to accomplish in that engagement.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
You're welcome.
We're going to move forward to our OIA charter discussion. Madam Auditor.
Okay, before we move forward with that, I just want to add that right now we haven't determined that we're going to have to move any engagements off of our work plan. We probably will once we actually get down and start to look at the hours and the staffing. So I will be bringing probably something back to the committee in January after we really figure out what's going to be needed to do these two engagements.
I think this probably answers my question in advance, because on the activities, it said there were no additions, no deletions, so this will be updated in January for the two projects that Kevin just spoke of.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So the next item, Kevin O'Connor is going to be going over, and that is the Office of Internal Audits Charter. Now, I know that the committee worked on their charter, which has to go through a certain process. I believe it'll go through the, forgive me for saying the wrong committee name, Policy and Review Committee. And then it will go to the board to be adopted. The Department of Internal Audit also has a charter that we operate under. And as part of our peer review that we went through a couple years ago, and part of our internal review that is led by Kevin Sankowski, Kevin O'Connor is proposing some changes be made to our particular charter. And that is the document that looks like this. And Kevin O'Connor, are you on?
I am,
Oh, okay, there, great.
yes.
So Kevin, I will turn it over to you to go over the charter and followed by the dashboard.
Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. This charter review, as Carolyn said, was really a result of the peer review, the internal and external assessment to make sure we are in alignment with the standards, which is the International Professional Practices Framework, which we adhere to. And standard 1000 is really the one that states that the CAE must periodically review the internal audit charter and present it to the board for approval. So periodically we must do that. No updates to the standards since 2017, but the IIA did issue a position paper called the Internal Audit Charter in August of 2018. So we also use that document to help make sure we're aligned with our standards. So that is what is reflected in the changes requested. At the bottom of page 1, under the authority portion, there are 2 items there that talk about actively participating in discussions that ultimately approving decisions regarding the appointment and removal of the CAE. And there's another bullet there also. Both of those were listed as examples in our standards that we follow. We had not included those in our charter initially. We'd included other examples, but we don't want there to be any gaps in everything. So we decided to actually put those in with the charter this time. And just a couple little other things. On page 3 under reporting and monitoring, it defines a scope of internal audit activities. That was something that came out of the position paper from IIA to make sure that scope is clearly defined in our charter. So that was really the only other significant thing that changed as part of that. So I'm glad to take any questions if anybody had any on the charter revisions.
Committee has had just a short time to look at this. Are there any questions?
You've had how long to look at it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Questions?
Oh,
No, I'm not seeing any questions thus far from the committee.
Okay, so we'll bring this back at a later date once you've had more time to look at it and probably ask for a vote, probably at the January or possibly February meeting.
okay.
The only, if I may,
Yes, sir.
the only suggestion, and this has come a long way from several years ago. This is really good work.
Thank you.
Maybe something in here, and I'm not sure whether it's reporting or monitoring or quite the right section, that if a disagreement with management exists, that the chief auditor would bring those disagreements for discussion with the audit committee. If remained unresolved, or if a risk remains in your opinion, not mitigated to a satisfactory level, that you would rise that to the audit committee's attention. I think those 2 things would be good adds, and
Okay,
this has come a long way.
and we can add that.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah,
Okay, Kevin, do you want to start the dashboard?
I do. Ryan is going to help me out by displaying the dashboard for everybody, but everybody should have a copy in front of them. Thank you, Ryan. So we'll start on page 3. first thing I want to address is the typo. It does say fiscal year 21 up there. It's actually fiscal year 22, and I will correct that. I apologize for that. And I'll just go over the bar chart, each section, and let you know which audit jobs are causing those numbers to be what they are. We'll start with the audit section. The blue bar is the data governance audit and the audit plan development for fiscal year 23. They are both in the planning phase. So those are the two jobs in the blue bar. The yellow bar, it also has two, and those are the general ledger and financial reporting and the federal and state grant compliance audits, and they are in progress. The orange bar is reports released, and that is the school building readiness audit, which is completed. And at the last meeting, we had an audit at a glance memo that was routed to everybody. The bar chart for the follow-up section, that's the middle section, has 4 items in the blue bar, and those are position control, investment management, revenue and accounts receivable, and the buildings and grounds work order follow-up projects, and they're all in the planning phase. Now, those were specific jobs in the audit plan. We're still working a lot of the other items that the superintendent, business and operations, and treasurer has provided to us that are ready for review. But like I said, we want to report out on those individually. The last area is the projects portion of this graph. And the blue bar is the mid-year risk assessment update. It's in the planning phase. That's the blue bar. The yellow bar is the district disaster recovery and COOP project, the Council of Great City Schools HR follow-up project, and the Council of Great City Schools transportation follow-up. And they are all in process. And then the purple bar indicates that the OIA Operation Procedures Manual has been completed. So pages 5, 6, and 7, same information, just a different format. And then pages 8, 9, and 10 are the same information in our Chevron format. So I'll pause here to see if there's any questions on that information or part of the dashboard report. Okay. Then we'll go to page 11. Again, Mr. Jordan, that's good catch. There's no additions, deletions, or adjustments to this
Hey,
audit
Kevin,
plan.
maybe you can't hear me. I'm sorry, Kevin.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ragland.
No problem. Back on page 3, if those categories can be labeled on the bar chart in the future, I'm not sure if I'm missing it, but if
Each section.
yes, not just the section, but the projects themselves.
Okay.
You gave detailed information on each project for each particular bar. If we could somehow find a way to have those labeled on the actual chart, that would help me.
Okay.
Because
We'll work on that.
I write slow. So, okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Kevin, before you go on, can I add, I think Mr. Ragland, would it be helpful, because the page that Kevin is on is like a overall summary, and then the detail, like when he was talking about like the reports that have been issued. If you go to page 5 and you'll see job number 7, buildings and grounds report issued. Is that kind of the detail that you're looking for?
Just a bit more on the actual bar chart itself, because he gave a very detailed explanation, moving from left to right. But if there's just a way that we could have that stuff articulated, and I know it's articulated in 2 different areas, otherwise, but as he's explaining it, it might be helpful to just have it there.
Okay, we'll see what we can do. I think we can
Absolutely
add something more.
Thank you.
More on here.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry,
We can
Kevin.
definitely work on that. No problem. So back to page 11. No additions, deletions, or adjustments to this audit plan, but definitely there will be some in January. So look for that coming. Then we have the outstanding recommendation update, and that is page 13. And we've extracted the outstanding recommendations information directly from Teammate, and we've categorized the information by the following areas. management accepts the risk, resolved by other means, closed and verified, which means that OIA confirms sufficient action was taken, and if it was a control, it's working effectively. Implemented, not verified, which is OIA work was completed and it's in a review stage for OIA management. That would be Carol and I or Kevin. Then in process OIA, which means those are active recommendations being worked by OIA. So management has told us those are ready for our review. And then in process management. So nothing has been provided to OIA regarding those recommendations. So I tried to split those out by each area. So the treasurer's office, then because business and operations is such a significant part of the superintendent operations, we decided to split that out as an item. And then the superintendent would be the other area. So we filled in the high, moderate, and low for each one of those, tried to color code them. And that way on the next page, we tried to put those in a pie chart.
I have a quick question.
Yes, absolutely.
Sort of conceptually about this. What is the, and I don't know if there is a mechanism or procedure for deciding that management accepts the risk? Like, do we even go through any decision-making in that process?
Well, I thought that would come up, so I will address that real quick. We had all of the ones listed in this document were ones that were accepted as part of the IT audit review. And we had Schneider Downs personnel come in and work with IT. And that probably happened 2 or 3 years ago when those were all accepted. So we did report those out as they are, but nothing since then has really been accepted risk by management.
Yeah, and I guess
again,
what I'm asking is, what's the process for determining, well, we'll live with that? And is there a process?
Well, in the past, what we've done is
Okay,
had management come to the table and discuss that with the audit committee,
right.
because it was significant enough that we thought the committee should weigh in on whether that was a risk that could be accepted, or if there are additional things that need to be considered before that was accepted.
Should that be part of our process?
Yeah, I would, go ahead, Mr. Grant.
No, just thinking back when some of those issues came up before, is that it got down to like a cost benefit issue. You know, I mean, it makes if it makes sense to spend that kind of money to address the issue that's being raised, or do you just accept it and deal with it from that standpoint? So.
And I mean, I understand, I guess what I'm wondering is, should we have a step in our process?
Yeah, I would submit that probably a best practice would be an annual reassumption of the risk, just for the high ones. We could, you could go down low, but I think just having a summary of that, we still think that acceptance of that risk is reasonable at this point in time. It might be different than it was before.
But we don't have anything in that category right now.
No.
Correct.
I agree.
But how do we get in that category in order to review it to decide if it can still stay there?
Yeah, I think as you look through, I think there are, what is it, maybe two high accepted risk, if I'm looking at it right? Yeah, so maybe it's on an annual basis that if there's still something that's significant, then I would submit a high is probably good enough, that we would just have an update as to why.
Oh, it is there, okay,
Yeah,
I
on the
didn't look
next
far
page,
enough,
yeah.
I see there are some. But I think that's smart to keep looking at it. If it's there, are we still okay living with that risk? But how do we get it in that category to begin with? That's the process I'm wondering about.
As Kevin said, in the past, we would, do the audit, and then management would come and instead of having an actual plan or recommendation, they would say that we are accepting the risk. And in the past, as Kevin said, they would have to come to Audit and Accountability, and if it was accepted by management and there was no pushback from A&A, then that was how we labeled it.
So,
But that's been a while.
but I guess what I'm thinking is, should we inquire from management how they perceive this risk and have that discussion
I think-
with everyone rather than,
I think
Because-
that's what Carolyn is saying, is that they come before this committee and presented it to us, and at that point, the audit committee actually, accepted management's response to
Yeah,
it.
no, I let me tip my hand here a little bit. I think that as an organization, and I think this is typical for many large quasi or governmental bureaucracies, we're very risk averse. And we don't differentiate in the way a for-profit organization would and say, I can live with that and can't live with that, and prioritize. And I think as a process, it makes it harder for us to move forward on our core mission because we're so busy worried about every little risk. And so it occurs to me that rather than, that we should build into our process a discussion about living with, these risks, which ones can we live with, almost like a procedure. Rather than, because if it's incumbent upon management to come and say, I live with that risk, culturally, that's a concept that's anathema. And so we have to learn, maybe we use our process as an opportunity to start having that discussion and exercising that muscle a little bit. That's my thought. But we want to go to trick-or-treating, so I don't want to keep talking. No, but I mean, let's think about that for a minute.
No, first things first. So
Go ahead.
we had a request to do like a yearly review. I think that would be one way to discuss it. Are you concerned about the frequency with which we look at these, or?
I'm saying we look at every one.
Yeah, I think you'd find, again, that a best practice would be a risk acceptance framework that would describe what's the risk tolerance and appetite of the organization, of the individual functions. And ours would be that there's a financial element to it, frequency and magnitude decision-making, and based upon the level of the issue, it can be assumed by one level up or two levels up.
They have the authority to accept it. Okay.
But then on an annual or more frequent basis, we look at the aggregate of all the assumed risk and say, do you get a different picture when you look at all the assumed issues over a process?
That makes sense.
And so I would go back-
Organizationally.
Right, so I would go back to the charter discussion. If internal audit feels that there is a level of risk that's not mitigated
Right.
in aggregate or in an individual, that gets brought to the committee for discussion.
Right.
Yeah, so we will be adding,
what I'm saying.
we would add, well, that was one of the things that Mr. Jordan suggested that we add to our
To the
charter.
charter, right.
And happy to help if I could be helping that space.
Okay, I was
Okay.
hoping you would say that. So thank you.
No,
Oh, just,
No, I'm
Ms.
okay for
Beckerly?
now. Yeah. I
okay,
have
yeah,
to-
I wanted to make sure that you, Mr. Grant, did I see your hand?
yeah, but it was just on another matter,
Sure.
as it relates to the dashboard specifically.
Yes, sir.
So I just was wondering if, because you present this quarterly, the dashboard,
Yes.
is that if we could actually have a comparison, like quarter to quarter, so we can see where the categories are shifting, so we have a better idea of, the movement from over time.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
we
almost
can
like a
definitely do
comparative, financial.
I think we kind of talked about that, but we
Yeah,
hadn't got there yet.
Maybe
So,
a 24-month or
Yep.
of
Yeah.
12-quarter moving, and you could have the bars, could be each individual department.
yeah,
Am I correct in, if I add up all the issues, we have 400 issues or 500 issues outstanding collectively? Is each office discrete?
that sound about right, Kevin?
Yes, yes, it does.
The other add I would have to go along with Mr. Grant is, what would be helpful is an aging of what's past due and past due by risk category. So I'd get
Yeah.
concerned if we've got a lot of past dues in a higher risk category.
Right.
And that could be another one where we would ask, depending on the level of risk, have an explanation for management at some frequency. How can we help you resolve the issue?
Because it's difficult to tell how long these things can stay in those categories. How many have been high risk before and then are still high risk versus how many have dropped off that are moderate and low. So just make sure we're keeping eyes on what's important.
Kevin, is it fair to say that we are working on that and are close to bringing that aging?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Great conversation and great feedback. Thank you. Kevin, you want to?
All righty.
Yes, sir, please proceed.
Okay. The next page will be 19 that I would discuss. And that's just the outstanding issues from external audits or external entities. So that's where that stands. Page 21 has non-audit activities for staff professional development. So it's just a listing of all the professional development events that staff took in September to enhance our knowledge base. And page 22 there lists the non-audit activities, which includes the advisory and consulting services. There's quite a few of them there, 5 or 6. And then district group participations, we still have a person assigned for the Facilities Master Planning Committee. So very valuable help there. Page 24.
Say
Hold on
quickly
one
to
second.
that, just that it's been really very much appreciated, Terry's participation in that FMP. She's been showing up to all of it, and having her eyes there and her perspective is just invaluable. So I wanted to acknowledge that.
We'll definitely let her know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Page 24, that's just a procedure strategy update. The OIA COOP has been updated, and we tested that on September 24th. We had a couple minor connectivity issues, but we will be retesting that here in the coming months to make sure that those did get worked out. And we have submitted that test and the updated COOP to Mr. Chris Ward, the Director of Safety and Security. And then page 26 is reflective of our new hire, Satya, and our personnel budget and our table of organization. So I'd be glad to take any other questions regarding the dashboard.
Thank you for this, Mr. O'Connor. I don't see any questions from committee members. I see a bunch of nods, so thank you, sir,
Thank
for
you.
this
Have a
information.
good day.
All right, next we are under risk management. Mr. Bahoric. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
So far, so good.
There you go.
I've been asked to give you an update on risks in the treasurer's office. So, as you might recall, I did come to this committee back in August of 2020 after my department engaged an outside firm to assist us in the performance of a overall departmental risk assessment. And we, I could safely say, didn't know much, if anything, about risk assessment and how to perform that function. And so we learned a lot in that process and how we were to identify both inherent and then residual risk categories and scores. Just by way of reminder, some slides from my previous presentation. And this process, as I just mentioned, involved us identifying risk categories, giving them a score in terms of their inherent risk, that is, the risk that exists prior to any implementation of controls. And then that would result in a residual risk score. That report gave us this heat map, and you might know that I borrowed this heat map concept to add to my financial report in terms of identifying variances of financial variances in terms of dollars as well as percent variances. And so you can see how inherent risk was scored with likelihood and the impact combining together to give you the inherent risk, and then some judgment on our part as to where we stood on a residual risk basis after certain controls and procedures we have in place to mitigate those risks. After that report was presented, we felt that our next steps would be to evaluate our strategies to mitigate the risks and look at those controls, and to ensure that our or at least evaluate our estimation of how we went from inherent to residual risks. And we have a spreadsheet from the firm. It's got all the items that they've noted. It shows all the functional areas and descriptions and risk rankings and the risk category. It gives us all that information. So we were well prepared to proceed with that. My staff member in the audience, Jenny Vanover, was charged with monitoring and keeping track of and, trying to push and probe my staff in the direction of beginning to address these risk categories and, just move down the road on risk evaluation and control. But unfortunately, we had a significant event. One of our risks, that is the departure of key staff members, went from theoretical to actual. And this was an unanticipated and sudden departure of a key member of the staff. And so we, quite frankly, were not prepared for that. We weren't structurally organized to address that. In fact, the issues of succession planning, career growth planning, sharing of knowledge were all goals that the board gave me as a direct report to begin to address in my organizational structure. So upon that event, we went into, as one of my staff members described as triage. We immediately reassigned duties, began to identify the duties that this individual covered, began the reassignment of the duties to existing senior staff, which amounted to, there were 3 of us in the office, and since I was doing the reassigning, I assigned it to the other 2, which is a luxury I have. But we reassigned those duties and began to investigate and learn a lot about that functionality. But in keeping with, I think we attribute this phrase to, at least I do, to Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis pass you by. Mm-hmm. And since we were already in turmoil, I decided to add insult to injury and suggested that we should begin to look at a full reorganization of my office. And there were other events leading up to this. My office had morphed a bit over time. I had created a process improvement functionality and had that report directly to me. I had inherited an organization that had, I would say, an interesting piece also reporting to me in addition to the controller's position. So I don't want to say it was a hodgepodge, but it was not a terribly purposeful organization. In October of 20, prior to this event and after we did our risk assessment, in response to what the academic side of the house had performed in the PDK audit, one of the recommendations there was that the budget office would be moved from the superintendent's line of the organization over to my line as chief financial officer. So we took that over and quite frankly didn't give a whole lot of consideration. Scott was an executive director, so we just plugged him into the chart and had him report to me. As you'll see here in this graphic, it was, again, not as purposeful of an organizational structure as I would like, and with that individual's departure, we decided to take a long, hard look at this and, in a nutshell, reorganize our staff and our functionality. We began with a bottom-up approach to the reorganization, and we delineated all of our functionality, the tasks that we do, the duties that we have, reports that we have to file, information that we have to deal with. We began to just do a complete memory dump and listing of that, and then began to organize that into groups. I knew from the onset that we might not be, it might not be a totally enlightened or brand new organizational structure. I kind of knew how it would flesh itself out, but we wanted to go through the exercise anyway because we felt that there were certain things that maybe needed to be realigned a little bit. So in a very high level look, we ended up in this grouping, organizing those tasks, functions, reports, pieces of data, all of that stuff into 3 essential branches in my office: operations, finance and budget, and then data and processes. More importantly, we refer to this as process improvement. And if you think of the Six Sigma process, that's where we are headed in terms of process improvement and looking at how we do things, documenting how we do things, and then looking at improvements and enhancements and how that happens. So we had them grouped this way, and just for clarity's sake, to let you know, operations is pretty much what you think of. Payables, receivables, payroll, fixed assets, we're over in the operational side. The area that I inherited, the budget department, which we call finance and budget now, we have budget analysts, a team of budget analysts that came over. And then we have another group of employees called area treasurers, which is pretty much my office's representatives out in the buildings and departments. And they previously, again, just coincidentally, and the way things were organized before, reported to the individual that was, we assigned, Jenny in the audience here, to the data and processes function. So it didn't make a lot of sense, but that's how it kind of happened over time. And so this is one area where we realigned them under budget and finance so that they could be coordinated with those groups of budget analysts. And then again, the data and processes arm of my organization now, which is very new to us, it includes some ERP specialists on our software that we use for financial purposes. And they'll be our resource to go to answer questions about, hey, we need to do this, how was that going to get done? But there are also that door swings the other ways where we're intending them to know the software, see features of the software, and then come back to us and say, by the way, the software can do this. That might help enhance our processes if you employ, change our process to use the ERP system. So it swings both ways. The question arises, how do we get that done? They go find that out. And the other way, hey, the system can do this. Why don't we change our process and engage with the system? Last but certainly not least is kind of my brainchild, and that's a data verification position. We have a lot of information flow in the district. Some of it originates in my office, some of it originates elsewhere in the district. It can make a circle out through other various governmental agencies, most notably Ohio Department of Education, and it goes in from one source and comes out the other end to me in terms of reports and funding and things like that. And I don't feel that there's a closed loop on making sure that what I get accurately reflects what went in. So this is a brand new endeavor on our part, and something that this individual starts Monday. So we're excited to have that. So this is now a little bit more detail on where we kind of ended up, or we're headed, I'll say that. This is just to give you an idea of those three legs: operations, finance and budget, and data and processes. And in the vein of growth, career growth, had a little lapse of memory there, career growth as well as succession planning and shared knowledge. These are position titles, kind of the pay grade differentials, if you will, in an organization. I just wanted to demonstrate that through the horizontal cut through my vertical organization, I will have an executive director heading up each one of those areas. They will be supported by a director. I hate the phrase assistant, because I don't need anybody to assist me, and they don't need anybody to assist them. They need somebody to do something. But for lack of, just for your own thinking about this, that would be more of an assistant position. And then supporting them is the next level of analysts and supervisors, who then work directly with the staff, the actual payroll clerks, accounting clerks, and such in the office. So I want to give you an idea of, that's the hierarchy I've created. So I began with the discussion about how we took our functions and organized them vertically, and then position-wise, this is how I set it up in terms of the horizontal cut for leadership and management. My organizational chart, at least the original one I had in mind, I was presented to FAC, Finance and Appropriations Committee, which is I'm a liaison to that committee. I presented that to them some time ago. I want to say probably back in June, and since that June timeframe, we've been working on position descriptions, posting, hiring, and I think we should be done. We've got a couple still in the hopper, so I believe that I can say by the end of this calendar year, we should have all of our staff on board, and then we'll be able to move to the next phase of our organization. I wanted to share with you, though, a little bit of how I morphed some positions that I have. And this next slide shows you, there we go. Just in these 6 positions, in the executive director level, in financial operations, I have repurposed. And what I mean by that is there was a position, and we changed the position description and title. We repurposed that FTE to the executive director of financial operations. This, in fact, is a former controller position. We do not have a position entitled controller any longer. In finance and budget, that's the area I inherited, and the individual coming over there was an executive director, so that's an existing position. And then in data and processes, we did not have an executive director, and to provide leadership there, I created a new position there. Again, she's in the audience, so we get to point to her. Jenny is our executive director for data and processes, being promoted from the director's position. Hats off to Jenny. This is probably her 4th or 5th different position, promotion. We've elevated her, and she continues. She's got to stop doing really well with all the things I give her if she doesn't want to get new titles and more job duties. So that's how that happens. She's our new executive director, in title pretty much only, because she's been with us as long as I have, quite frankly. On the director level, you'll see in financial operations, I did not have a director there. And so we created that position, and that has been filled, and that person is with us, as is the executive director. Both new people, both started right around Labor Day, and I can say it feels like they just started last week, but they're already been here for 7 weeks or so, and they fit well with the team, and they're contributing, and have already begun in our meetings looking at me when I start to get into some of the details. They look at me and they go, no, that's not yours anymore, that's ours, and they're taking that on, which is very helpful. In finance and budget, the director's position there was a repurpose. We took 2 positions that we had, I believe one in budget and one over in the old data and processes line of work, and that supervised the area treasurers. We repurposed those 2, elevated one to director, and then created a lower position in that budget area. So we were able to stay relatively cost neutral there by repurposing 2 positions and creating this director's position. We were able to promote an individual in our office to that, and he's always been my right-hand person for processing grant information and approving reports and whatnot. I am not allowed to do anything relative to grants unless his little stamp is on there saying that it's okay. So a very valuable team member, and he hit the ground running and has taken on his expanded role. It's just amazing to see how that's working out so well. And last but certainly not least, we had the position, Director of Data and Processes, or actually it's the Director of Process Improvement is the official title. That is Jenny's former position, and we have filled that with a person who, I think I can share this in terms of the interview process. Actually went out and several days before, because they didn't necessarily have any training before in Six Sigma and what this process improvement functionality was about. And in preparation, went out and actually purchased a textbook or whatever, read up on it, and really in a very short period of time, in several days, came prepared in the interview to talk conceptually about what she had learned, ask appropriate questions, and it really was, I think, pretty impressive very much impressed the interview team that she would, be that interested and go the extra mile. She too has already started to inquire about processes and point things out and make comments. And if this is any solace to the committee, I might prefer facing your questions rather than hers. So that's how well that's working out for us. Some of this you won't be able to read, but I just want to give you, it's really a picture tells 1,000 words.
It really does.
This has been prepared to group together all those functions and reports and tasks that we outlined, and how did we end up grouping them together? All the green boxes are functions. Accounts receivable and invoicing, for example, working with the chart of accounts is a function. So those are all the green boxes. The blue boxes are more reports and data sources. Filing a PCR, project cash request, or a final expenditure report. Those are reports and data that we work with. And of probably most interest are I guess these would be called pink boxes or red boxes. These are the ones we identified that we believe were, we either know or believe were former controller functions, and how we divvied them up. Even today, as we went through this, we realized that there was one that really wasn't, that's marked as former controller position, and it wasn't. Again, it was over with someone else. But anyway, the idea here is to show you that not all of the controller's duties were necessarily financial operations, that we have looked at them and realized that they are more budget and finance oriented, and so we more appropriately assigned them into that area. Most notably, under process improvement, you see that as I told you, process improvement, I wanted to create that functionality. I did. It reported to me. So it really, there aren't any controller boxes in there because he wasn't involved in that activity. It was strictly me. And once again, lady in the audience, Jenny, working on process improvement, working through that. So that's how that works, functionality, how that was grouped. And I thought just pictorially you'd like to see how we divvied that up. And it demonstrates that we started, as I said, from the ground up, not force-fitting positions, but actually assigning tasks and then identifying people who currently perform them and organize them and group them accordingly. This is pretty much how it looks. It doesn't delineate all the positions at this point. I'm at the top with my administrative assistant and an executive director for financial affairs, a new position for us, but one that will assist me in coordinating across all of these various functionalities. What's key here is that those three branches don't operate independently. They, in fact, must coordinate daily, because what each one of them does impacts the other, and there's just a lot of joint work going on. I will tell you that the three people who head are my three executive directors are all licensed school treasurers. I have several other licensed school treasurers on staff. So as I like to describe their job, they are in fact a school treasurer, only focused on just a particular aspect of the overall operation. If you were in a smaller school district, the treasurer would have their hands and fingers in all of this. We are much too large for me to do that. This is how it looks. You can see the various positions there and how they align. And I'm pleased with where we're headed at this point. Like I said, we should have this fully staffed and continue with its implementation by the end of this year. So all of the other risks and the attention that we wanted to give to that risk study, quite frankly, took a back seat. We did the risk study in the middle of the COVID. We did it remotely. So we did it in 20. So we had to do that remotely, but did get it done. And as we had planned to proceed and act on some of that, we got hit with this event. And since March, it's been now, 7 months, we've had to deal with addressing that and get this reorganization in place. So a step at a time. I know that we have, as you saw from the dashboard, we have many old items and old audits to work with, and that quite frankly has taken a back seat over the last 7 to 10 months. Like I said, you don't let a good crisis pass you by, and then I added this reorganization. So, but all in all, I'm pleased with the organization and where we're headed. So with that, I'll end, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to give it a shot to give you an answer. Oh, and let me say one other thing. I would, just a little recommendation as the committee considers that risk assessment and acceptance of risk and all of that, I would encourage you to invite the management side in to give our perspective, because the assignment or the evaluation of that risk score, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, maybe it is objective. I think in some ways it's subjective. And so we might see things on management a little bit different than internal auditors do. We try and have fun with our internal auditors, but that may be an oxymoron, I don't know. But they see things one way and we see things another, and that's probably healthy. But when you get down to acceptance of risk, I'd like to hear about that and participate in that. I think previously, I believe Mr. Jordan, you had asked a question about who the final arbiter of acceptance of risk is. Don't know that was ever resolved, but from a management perspective, I'm sure that we all would like to at least have a seat at the table to hear that and opine from our perspective, because we are not internal auditors. I'm a marketing finance guy. And so I learn all the time. That exercise that we did, the project that we did with the outside firm was a great learning experience. I didn't know inherent risk from residual risk. And I thought that was a very important thing to pick up on. So we're trying to embrace that, but some of us learn a little bit slower than others, so bear with us. But if we can have a seat at the table, that'd be great. I'm done now. Thank you, Chair.
No, that more than appropriate, Stan, and thank you for that. I think what you just described is exactly the culture that we want to create across the district. The ability for your department to work in close concert with Carolyn and OIA and all of you to be working in close concert with the administration in a spirit of cooperation. We're all going to get better based on the work that each department is doing, and what you've described there, we've been articulating, and you all, to your credit, have been working towards that. I mean, we've seen significant gains towards that, and so the fact that you would feel comfortable in saying that in this environment is a huge step for us as a district as well. So thank you for that.
Certainly.
I want to make sure that we open up any questions regarding Stan's report here. Understanding that you did suffer significant loss in March, it feels good to know that you've done the work and gotten the ducks all in a row. This gives us a lot of confidence, and so I really appreciate this. So questions from the committee? Mr. Grant?
No. I was just gonna say I appreciate your report. It's really good.
I was saying, that's very, very well done. Looks good. Just two thoughts. One would be, how has your team's reaction been to it? And then what skill sets do you see that you may need to go out and seek to fill out your organizational chart?
Well, the actual event was traumatic. This was a 15-year or so veteran, friend. Sorry.
Take your time.
The go forward model is what?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, so it was tough, but what was rewarding was when we all came together.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
In that traumatic situation. It was a shock to everyone to hear from me at, 5 a.m. in the morning to say that we needed to come together. And we did that, and then we tackled the next project jointly, the three of us, Scott and Jenny and me and I. And I think as we moved forward, we all we learn about these things in classes about organizational structure and setting up compensation systems and designing jobs and talking about promotion and motivating people. We see that in a textbook framework. It's not, you don't always get that opportunity to execute on something like that. This is the first time in 40 years, over 40 years, that I've actually been able to sit down and take all that book work that I have and put it into practice. And it was exciting. We got done at times, and we all said, boy, what we just did over the last 4 hours sitting in my office, this is really good stuff. And then the proof of the pudding was then going out to those individuals that we felt would be a good fit for the positions. And in many instances, giving them the first opportunity in their career here with Columbus Schools to be promoted. And yes, be paid more, but to be recognized for their performance, for their capabilities, and given the opportunity to perform at another level. And then to see them embrace that and literally to blossom. I don't have another word for that. To watch an individual blossom in that job, and really, it was a great thing for the organization because we got the performance we wanted. But what a wonderful thing for that individual as a person to see that they were very proud in what they were doing. That's pretty exciting. And then the new people that we bring in see that and feel that, and you know, I believe it or not, and we could talk philosophically about the outside opinion of Columbus City Schools. But this, I could say, my experience, we have created something where I think people want to come, I'll say for my department, they want to come work for me. They want to come work in my department.
Yes, sir.
They look forward, to coming to work in the environment that we've created. And that's, 40-some years. It's pretty cool for me to watch that. And I think that this sets up, again, that piece of the organization that I can touch. It sets us up for success in the future. That hopefully it will last beyond my tenure here. So I can't speak to resources I'm looking for because I found a lot of them.
That's right.
I found them, and each individual is different, and it makes for a very interesting combination of talents and personalities and interests and experiences that they all bring to the table. And I'm very pleased that I think the culture I've created is when we are in, especially with my leadership team, when we're in a meeting, there's no organizational chart, there's no title, there's a discussion about issues and problem solving and a freedom to offer advice and take advice. And so that's it's working extremely well as far as I'm concerned. So thanks for that opportunity to share. But I had this first time I relived that experience. So
Mr. Grant, did I see your hand earlier and just miss it before Mr. Jordan started talking? Okay. Other question, Mr. Daniel?
Well, not a question, but just a statement. I echo what the chairman said in regards to we like to see things of this nature happening, because you definitely addressed the secession the secession issue, and then giving employees opportunities. Part of this committee, as I'm saying, I'm newer to the committee, is we look at the big picture. A lot of times we look at the forest, but it's nice to see that the trees are being taken care of because that's what creates the entire environment that functions in. So it looks real good and strong to me from that standpoint.
thank you.
Ms. Beckerly?
No, I just echo everyone.
Certainly. Madam Auditor?
No, I'm just going to say that we're looking forward to working with Stan and the reorganized team. And I kind of know what you're saying when you feel good about, what you have created for the people in your department, because I feel the same way. The hardest part of COVID for me was not getting together with my team, not celebrating, birthdays or holidays, or just coming into the office and being excited to share, whatever it was that, happened, and then just getting in there and tackling, the issues ahead. Like Stan, I think part of the draw to the quality staff that I've been able to recruit is the reputation that we have. So I know that feeling, and we just have to get it going out throughout the entire organization. So.
We're definitely working on it. And Ms. Jenny, thank you to you and to Scott Gooding, who is somewhere, I'm sure, within earshot maybe. But thank you for all of the work that you all are doing and for your report here today. Stand very proud of what we're seeing coming out of the Treasurer's Office. Madam Auditor, I'm going to turn it back over to you if you have any further announcements. Anything else on the...
The only announcement that I have is that our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for January 27th, 2022. And if we haven't already, we'll get those invites for you to put onto your calendar. And the meetings will be at this location.
Well, to the committee, thank you for a very tough year. Glad to see all of you in person again. Thank you for your patience and cooperation as we've kind of gone through a tumultuous couple of years here as a committee, but we are starting to see some daylight in a lot of varying areas here in Columbus City Schools, and your work and your advice to us has been imperative to our success. So thank you so much for all that you are doing. Madam Co-Chair?
I just want to echo that. The gratitude we have to our committee members is immeasurable. We really appreciate it.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.